Okay guys, we already saw all the other Dragon Nest media on this channel, and it was mostly bad. But my quest is not over yet, because there is still more official Dragon Nest media for me to cover. That is why I'm dedicating today's episode to the Dragon Nest manga, otherwise known as Dragon Nest Shangeki no Sedo. For some reason, the English name of this manga is really messed up on Wikipedia. So I'm gonna go with how it's called on the CIA wiki. Dragon Nest, said sudden attack. And if that made you question, wait, who the hell is this said? I am platinum level expert in Dragon Nest lore, but this is my first time ever hearing about this character. You'll soon understand why. Firstly, I want to note that some people think that this manga was created as an advertisement for the game, but that's actually not the case. This manga was made as a completely different thing. What do I mean by that? Stay tuned to find out. As I was doing my usual research, I realized that this piece of Dragon Nest media is gonna be quite different from the ones I've looked at previously. Because unlike all of these major productions with large budgets, this one was made by just one guy. The guy in question is Tatsubon. You may also know him for such works as Tadoroko-san and Kawaii Hito. Wait, no, I mean this one. Anyway, the Dragon Nest manga was then published by Kodansha and also featured in the monthly Shonen Rival magazine from July 2010 to the May of 2011. It was a rather short series, spanning only over 3 volumes, with the first one being published on the 4th of October 2010, the second one on the 4th of February 2011, and the last one on the 3rd of June 2011. Yeah, as you could already guess by the small number of volumes, this manga is yet another victim of the infamous Dragon Nest cancellation curse. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll understand what I mean by that. Despite this, however, the series is marked as complete by the author, but we'll get to the reason for that in a second. After finding out that this manga was made by just one guy, it made me really curious, so I tried to dig up more information about him. That is when I stumbled upon this CIA wiki page I've briefly mentioned previously. And here is where I found a crucial piece of information that completely flipped my perception of this whole manga. Remember when I was asking who is this Sed guy the manga is named after? Well, turns out that Sed is the name of Tatsubon's playable warrior. And besides that, he also means sorceress, who is also one of the major characters in his story. Yeah, these may look like the characters you know and love, but no, they're all just OCs. This is like if I made a manga about Srin, like the character I'm using to represent myself right now. Which means that I was tricked into reading a playable OC fanfiction, god damn it. Yes, the shocking truth about Shangeki no Sedo is that it was not made as an ad for the game, but is actually a licensed fanfic. And I was so distracted by it being official Dragon Nest media that I had absolutely no idea about this until I went out to do my research for this video. All of this just made me even more curious, like how did Tatsubon even get the license to turn his fan manga into an official one? Was it just that easy to do back in the day? I had many questions, but unfortunately, I couldn't find any answers to them. So I thought, why don't I just ask the guy himself? But there's no way that would work, right? It actually worked. So yeah, I am proud to announce that I fought my social anxiety and won. Anyway, our communication was a bit scuffed because I don't speak Japanese and he doesn't speak English. So I had to write to him using Google Translate. So everyone watching this who actually knows Japanese is probably dying of cringe right now. I didn't want to bother the guy too much, so I just settled with my initial set of questions. But even from that, I think I managed to get a pretty clear picture of how things went down. So basically, the story went something like this. Tatsubon was playing Dragon Nest and came up with the story based on his experience in the game. At the time, it was his first time making a serialized manga, with him previously drawing as a hobby. I did ask whether the information about the classes he played was accurate, since I didn't find a source, to which he didn't deny it, so I guess it's confirmed now. He approached the publisher Kodansha, which presumably hooked him up with Identity games. So it wasn't Identity who reached out to him. He was the one who reached out to them. Also, a little caveat. Tatsubon technically didn't make this manga completely by himself, since he had a team of editors and other people from the publishing agency. So keep that in mind too. When asked whether he had full creative control, Tatsubon replied that there were certain restrictions. Unfortunately, he refused to comment as to what these restrictions were. Oh god, what did Identity do to this man? Since only 3 volumes of the manga ever came out, I naturally wondered what exactly caused the story to be cancelled. The answer was surprisingly simple, with Tatsubon stating that there simply wasn't enough interest in the manga, so it probably just wasn't worth the effort put into producing it. He also said that he considered continuing the story, but then just gave up on it over time. And yes, if any of you were wondering, unfortunately, Tatsubon doesn't play Dragon Nest anymore. So can we get an F in the chat for our fallen soldier, please? Besides the manga itself, it also had a promotional event where those who managed to register the code that came with the manga issue would receive a special costume in the game, which was also designed by Tatsubon. And since the requirements of receiving it were so specific and probably region locked to Japan, it might as well be the rarest costume in the entire game. But I don't think anyone is mad about having to miss out on this. Yeah, I have to admit, these look much better on paper than as actual models for some reason. Anyway, we're gonna talk more about the funny costumes when we get to the manga itself. But talking about the manga, it was actually quite interesting to hear that the reason it was cancelled was because it wasn't popular enough. I mean, it did come out at the time when Dragon Nest was still in its prime, so I'd imagine there would be more demand for something like this. I must also mention that since this is basically a licensed fanfic made by just one guy, my standards of judgment are gonna be different compared to my previous reviews. Trust me, this script was much more savage before I discovered this information. That said, after reading this manga, I do see a reason as to why people weren't really captivated by it. So now, it is finally time to take a deeper look as to what that reason is.
My mommy said no more skibidi toilets, so I left a poo-poo in her chocolate cake.
The first volume begins similar to how the game starts as either warrior or archer, with Lily getting attacked by monsters. Also yeah, only the first 2 pages of this manga are gonna be color. Apparently that's a thing that mangas do, and I couldn't really find a reason why. This is a story of gods, dragons, and friendship. Oh god, what the hell is wrong with that hound? Anyway, as you could already guess after the first section of this video, you didn't skip it, did you? This archer is not Triana, but Okiron. And yeah, I have to admit, it was a real pain in the ass to remember this name for me. So I'm just gonna call her Oki.
Okay.
While she's fighting the monster, the main character shows up and announces himself to be Sed, or Sed Novstad, which is apparently his full name. Nobody is gonna refer to him by that name. Shenanigans ensue, and after they finally clear the starter cutscene, they find out that Rose was kidnapped. Seth declares that he is gonna be the one who saves her, but Oki is like, bruh, you suck at this game. It took you 5 minutes to clear the starter cutscene with my help. How the hell are you gonna save Rose? To which Seth hits her with top 10 epic dead father quotes.
If you're unsure of what to do, move forward. A warrior should never look behind him. Those are the words of my late father.
Apparently, Oki thought that quote went so hard, she decides to join him. Even though she is complaining the entire time that she has her own mission from the queen and can't go with him. Girl, you know you can just leave, right? Bro is not holding you at gunpoint, you literally have free will. They talk to the vigilantes and find out that there are other missing people besides Rose, so they decide to save them too. We then meet our third main character, the sorceress Yuri. No, not that Yuri. And not that one either. Or maybe we do have this type of Yuri going on though. Anyway, Yuri leads them to the dungeon where all the missing people are. But then the gang gets ambushed by monsters. And this is where we find out that plot twist. Yuri was actually in cahoots with the monsters and was luring people into the dungeon to get them captured and turned into slaves. And if you didn't know, slavery is actually canon in the Dragon Nest universe. Although this was made way before Machina came out, and I'm honestly not sure whether hybrids were the only enslaved race in Legendia. But still, when I first saw this, I thought, wow, this is a really cool take on a dark version of Sorceress. Since canonically, Sorceress is obsessed with money. It would be sick to see a twisted alternative universe where she takes her obsession to extreme and gets involved with monsters and the black market. From that, she could either become an additional antagonist, or the heroes decide to convert her to the path of good and show her that no money can be as precious as human life. But this concept gets wasted literally on the same page where it's introduced. Because instead of all this, Yuri is actually doing that because she's a giant pussy. Yeah, I'm gonna spoil it, but this becomes a recurring problem with this manga. It shows you a concept that could be sick as fuck, but nothing cool actually happens, and instead it turns into the most generic and boring plot you could possibly imagine. Anyway, the three of them manage to defeat all the monsters, but when they go to get the hostages, they find out that Rose was already taken by Velskut. And I'm really glad that they made Velskut look fine as fuck in here. Obviously, because he is. I will not be hearing any other opinion. Yes, I'm talking to you, CA Wiki. The fuck you mean unconventional? This is a story of gods. Dragons. Roar, dragons. And friendship. Yay, I love my friends, yay. While trying to chase after Velskut, the gang gets attacked by harpies.
And I thought, my god, that came out of the blue. You know, I wouldn't expect something like that to come out of his mouth.
Bruh, hell nah. The last thing I expected here was the slur nest. But saying this was a big mistake, since now the party had a reason to cancel the harpies on Twitter and win the fight. After successfully cancelling them, they set their sights on Velskut. But on their way they meet Argenta, and this is where the translation that I was reading completely went to shit. Also, this panel of Argenta choking the fuck out of him goes hard. Wait, if Tatsubon drew Argenta doing this to his playable character, does that mean he wished that was him in place of Warrior instead? I guess the speak wasn't the only thing that's hard. Okay, moving on. After seeing how determined the gang is, Argenta lets them do their thing, but she tricks them into looking for a town while going off to fight Velskut herself. But then the gang comes back after realizing they were bamboozled and all of them try to fight Velskut together. They fail. And that's the end of Volume 1. Pack it up, guys.
This is Ohio, home of the Gritty and Rizzlers. I'm having skibidi toilet withdrawals. I'm going insane if I don't watch episode 99.
The second volume starts out in the hot springs. For some reason. I guess fighting Velskut has made everyone really stinky. They don't spend a lot of time in there, as next thing they find Argenta and say that they want to join her. That is where Argenta tells them about the dragon raid. You probably already know about the raid. Everybody knows about the raid. Your mom knows about the raid. Let's get going. Now this manga does have a bit of lore problems, but I'm gonna have to give them a pass because As I've already said, this is basically a licensed fanfic, and this was made very early on into the Dragon Nest story, and there is a lot you wouldn't know back then without the power of hindsight. And even with all those caveats, this manga has better lore than the Dragon Nest movie, so that's incredibly telling. Argenta tells the heroes that Velskut should be on his way to Saint Haven, so they leave to find an airship. But on their way, they get ambushed by a bunch of spiders for some reason. And I honestly have no idea why this entire section is even here. I feel like this was literally added just because Bro didn't get the minimum page requirement and had to come up with some random filler. Nonetheless, this scene does have a goofy moment that I do want to talk about. While the gang was being absolutely decimated by spiders, Sed suddenly gets a flashback of his dead father, which makes him remember the secret family technique that he uses to destroy the monsters in one hit. And if you're thinking, wait, all of this kinda sounds like Demon Slayer, that's because this literally is Demon Slayer. Main character is fighting a strong opponent and losing. Main character sees a flashback of his dead father. Main character remembers the technique demonstrated to him by dead father. Main character uses technique to win the fight. He winner. I am honestly baffled by how huge of a coincidence this is. But if you're thinking that I'm accusing Tatsubon of plagiarism, I am not, because the Dragon Nest manga actually came out like 5 years before Demon Slayer did. So if anything, it would be the other way around. And the thought that the author of Demon Slayer not only read the Dragon Nest manga, but thought that this plot device was so fire they had to add it to their own work is hilarious to me.
Nezuko, no!
Just for the record, I don't think that happened, and all of this is probably just a very strange cosmic level coincidence. But Sewin, you say, since this scene introduces the secret family technique, then it's not filler at all. Which I would completely agree with if it weren't for the fact that there is only one other moment where this move is used. And when it does get used, it just makes this entire scene get even worse. But we'll get to that in due time. Anyway, this happens for absolutely no reason, and I am showing this to you just because I was forced to see that. By the way, this is now the second piece of the official Dragon Nest media, where Warrior is motorboating Archer. And no, I am not looking up the clip of that happening in the movie, so you'll just have to trust my word. So after all of this weird and useless bullshit, we finally get to the airship. And this is where the story actually picks up for a bit. On the ship, they meet this bubbly merchant named Shoplina. And I'm just gonna blame the whack-ass name on the translation. They also spot a creepy masked guy, but while everyone is too focused on judging his unknown cosplay.
What is that? It's the Ender!
The ship suddenly gets attacked by a manticore. Yuri quickly figures out that someone on the ship must be controlling it using magic, so now they're trying to find out who that might be. Their suspicion immediately falls on the anonymous masked guy, so Seth confronts him about it. But instead of answering him, the guy gets up and stabs Lena, because guess what? Lena was actually Elena. You know, like an email. But I do have to say, this twist was actually pretty cool, not gonna lie. Would be even cooler if the CIA wiki didn't spoil it for me. The Anonymous reveals that Elena was the one behind the kidnapping of Rose and the confusion at Keldrock. Wait, I think she's also behind the confusion of me. Because what the hell was the confusion that Keldrock bro is talking about? Now, this might be another translation snusk, but I've read this manga 2 times for this video, and I still don't understand which incident bro is referring to here. Is this the spider filler? Is that what that was? Bro, what? Anyway, Elena is threatening to destroy the whole ship, But that's when the guy rips off his anonymous mask and reveals himself to be this story's designated cleric before one-shotting both Elena and the Manticore. This is where I have to reveal that when I was reading this for the first time, I was still thinking that the gang was supposed to be the main cast like Shy and Angelica and Triana. So when the cleric was revealed to be this, I was like, huh? Who the hell is this guy? And I still think it's funny how every other class is identical to the game, except for cleric for some reason. But honestly, I'm glad that's the case, because it means that I wouldn't have to look at Eden's musty ass. This is Banetta, and he is my favorite character from this manga. Yes, I can't believe I'm saying this, but this manga achieved the impossible task of making me like a cleric. Apparently, all you had to do is give him black and white hair and make him edgy. It was actually very funny to find out that Tatsubon used to be an assassin, because it honestly explains why this character is like this. Since at the time there was no designated Agelord class yet, he had to settle with turning cleric into one. Also, there's a fun detail I've noticed about him. If you actually remember the second page of the first volume, it shows Banetta's hair as being fully white, but now it was changed to have a black patch in his bangs, and it was honestly the best decision because black and white hair is peak character design and I will die on this hill. Anyway, the ship crashes, but nobody really cares and continues yapping. Banetta reveals that he was ordered to track down Velskut, which means he has the same goal as our gang. Sed invites him to team up, but Banetta slaps away his hand like an absolute chad he is, and roasts the fuck out of Sed for being a pathetic bitch. And if that wasn't enough, Banetta kicks him in the fucking face for just daring to ask him to join the team. Yes, I have to remind you, this is literally all that Sed did to warrant himself such a violent ass whooping. This is what my social anxiety thinks will happen to me if I talk to a stranger. Okay, for some reason while reading this, I completely skipped over the part where Seth grabbed him by the collar. But still, the reaction is a bit over the top if you ask me. Also, everyone around them is surprisingly okay with this. In fact, they want to see Seth's ass absolutely obliterated, like what the hell is this? Did the ship crash through the monolith into Mistland? Like, what the hell is going on here? His friends are the only ones who actually gave a shit. So they tell Banetta the information that he was practically ready to torture out of them. Well, at least he said thank you.
Well, what the hell, what?
Okay, so far Banetta was established to be charismatic, but at the same time arrogant and unstable. Overall, everything about him screams rival, and turning one of the playable characters into a rival is actually a sick idea. Now our main cast would compete against Banetta to see who can not only defeat Velskut, but do so the first. Perhaps there could be a subplot where Sed or the other characters get so focused on surpassing Banetta that they start to forget what their main goal is, so they get back on track and learn a valuable lesson in the process. Or maybe we find out the reason Banetta became so aggressive and distant, which could be used to develop his character and potentially give the heroes an opportunity to resolve his issues. Instead, he joins their team literally in the next fight as if nothing ever happened between them. I am devastated to announce this, but the Banetta stock is going down. I repeat, the Banetta stock is going down. He is still arguably the most interesting character out of the main group, but what the hell is this, bruh? He was just established as the perfect rival, and it would have been so cool to see. But nope, we are hopping straight into the friendship land with absolutely zero character development. But before I proceed ranting, let's see how we actually get to that point. Our three heroes follow Banetta, and they find him fighting Gerant. Wait, what? Gerant now attacks all four of them. He then reveals that he's actually working with Velskut, and wow. I actually didn't see that one coming. I was so intrigued by the idea of evil Gerant to you. But then I thought, wait a minute, he's probably just testing them. And I was right. Gerant was indeed doing a bit of trolling. And I cannot believe this is actually real. But somehow this manga managed to combine not only one, but two missed opportunities into a single scene. At this point the writing is so generic it's actually impressive. Like I didn't even think that was possible. Okay, I am getting ahead of myself once again. When everyone finds out that they have to fight Gerant now, Benetta suddenly goes off on a completely unprompted monologue about how his brother was secretly a dragon follower and killed all of Benetta's close friends. Also yes, apparently his brother is Cleric Jake. You know, the guy we all beat up in Mana Ridge. Benetta was so traumatized by this event that now he is afraid of getting close to others in fear that they will betray him too. And this is indeed a reasonable crash out, but there were like 50 billion better ways of revealing this lore without making him trauma dump out of nowhere. Anyway, this is the part where Gerant reveals that this was all a social experiment, and he invites the gang to join him. They leave to look for Wellscoot and find Rose. Charging, I guess. They try to unplug her from the outlet, but Wellscoot is pissed about that. They try to fight him again, and can you guess what happened? They failed. But this time, Wellscoot finally completes his dragon transformation. And with that comes the end of Volume 2.
I curled a pillow for 55 reps, and now I'm exhausted waiter. Can you please get me one Chug Jug and one Grimace Shake, Aiden Ross? I'm your #1 fan.
This is a story of gods, dragons, and—
Shut the fuck up!
The last volume starts off with Dragon Wellscoot heading towards Saint Haven for some reason, and everyone freaking out. Benetta is not beating the cleric stereotype, and tells everyone to start praying. But this triggers Seth to have a Vietnam flashback. Turns out, when he was a child, his village was attacked by the monsters, so everyone took shelter in the church. Apparently Seth was the only child in the entire village, which now that I think about it is the only thing that makes the story kinda goofy. Nonetheless, because of this, he's the only one who can hide under the goddess statue. Which you'd think would be enough to hide him, but then it cuts to him running away. So like, what was even the point of the statue, bruh? Anyway, he almost gets caught by monsters, but then he gets saved by his adoptive father. Yeah, I skipped over that because this was also the part of that one filler scene in Volume 2. This is what you might say. See, Serene, that part was not filler because it explained that Seth was adopted. But no, this flashback actually makes that scene even more of a redundant filler. Because it not only showed how he was found by the man who ended up adopting him, but also shows what happened to Seth's birth family. Which means there was literally no point to that first filler scene at all. Anyway, after the dead father filled Seth with determination, he joined Gerant in fighting Wellscoot, while everyone else stayed behind to guard Rose. Gerant loses his only remaining eye, so Seth decides to become his guide dog. But it doesn't really work and Gerant crashes straight into the city. Everyone is scared of Gerant except for Seth, so he asks why Gerant is still on the side of humans, even though they hate him. And that is where we find out that plot twist. Seth's father actually used to be friends with Gerant, and I do have to say, that twist actually got me. But like, this has to be the most self-insert OC trope I've ever seen. Hey, did you guys know that my character's father was actually friends with Gerant himself? Look at how cool my character is. Did you guys also know that my uncle works at Identity? Gerant continues to fight Wellscoot and is starting to lose. But then the king's army suddenly pulls up out of nowhere and starts cannon blasting Wellscoot's ass. Now hold on a minute. I thought it was just established that humans hate dragons. But now all of a sudden they decide to help one of them? And it's not just anyone but the king's army. And now they're— wait, what?
Huh?
You just said to protect the golden dragon, but literally on the next page, you're now saying to aim cannons at both dragons? Huh? What the hell berry is going on here?
What the hell on?
At first I even thought that the pages got mixed up, but no, this is the actual order of events. You're telling me that the team of editors saw this and was like, yeah, this makes perfect sense. Absolutely no bullshit going on here. Anyway, I have no clue what the fuck even happened, so let's just move on. The rest of the gang shows up to join them, because Rose doesn't need to be guarded anymore, I guess. This time they do manage to beat Whalescoot, but before they have time to celebrate, monsters break into the city. Sid can't join everyone because he's too wounded, so he stays with Gerant in the loser club. But then it turns out that Whalescoot is not actually defeated, and they have to admit, this pick is the absolute gangster shit. Sid tries to fight Whalescoot again, but gets humbled immediately. However, Whalescoot doesn't kill him because even he knows that would be lame as hell. We then read the letter to Rose's grandpa. It tells them that Gerant and Rose are stuck in the king's basement, and she's fine for now. But we all know how that goes. Anyway, the heroes decide that while nothing important is going on, they will do some side quests in the meantime. Now pay attention to the wording here. The four of us are in a party. Our adventures start now, etc. Okay, so that means all of them went on an adventure together, right? Wrong. All of them actually split up to do their own thing. What? It's like these chapters were written by two different people who didn't read each other's work. What the hell even happened here? Anyway, Yuri returned to Mana Ridge to study magic. Oki left to report to the Elf Queen. By the way, I love how this was probably made before Anu Arundel was a thing, so it's just unspecified Elf Kingdom. Benetta stayed in Saint Haven and Sid just logged off the game, I guess. We have a time skip and cut over to Benetta visiting Gerant in the castle. And yeah, this is where those goofy costumes that I've mentioned at the very start of the video actually appear. And they definitely look much better in the manga. Except for this dumbass mask, it really needs to go. Like, look at this. I know I just said the mask is silly, but what the hell even happened here? Why did it turn into this comically large eye patch? And this Taco Bell diarrhea green color just makes everything even stinkier. The warrior one is passable, like this could be one of those costumes you get for free and you hate it, but you're forced to wear it because you don't want to spend money on something that actually looks good. The worst part is the uncomfortable looking helmet that is low-key giving one of those football game drinking hats to me. Like, you could probably stick a cola can under each of the horns and it would actually work. The archer is honestly the least offensive. It kinda looks like an extra version of her default costume. Although it would probably look a bit better if you removed this goofy helmet wig on the back. But sorceress! The sorceress one feels like a hate crime. Like, bruh, why she got them Lalaloopsia string pigtails sticking out of her hood? Girl got them Waka's clown shoes on with the sperm looking sus as fuck pattern on them. I'm dead ass, this feet has at least 5 different patterns and none of them match each other. Her ass is not on the way to cast spells. She's on her way to be a Karen at Walmart.
Somebody lied to her several times and told her that she was fly, hot, and sexy and beautiful, and she's nothing like that. She's nothing of the sort.
Yeah, I have no idea what in the randomized sim even happened here. Maybe it's the art style that didn't quite translate here. Or maybe it's the color scheme. Well, it's probably all of the above. All I can say is, the guy really likes open shoulders. That is definitely a pattern I see. Okay, this is enough of the feet patrol for now. Let's get back to the story. Gerant tells Benetta that the soldiers who went to the Forsaken Islet were kidnapped. But not just that, the sea serpent had also awakened. Benetta decides to go help Jaren fight it, and we get to that one dungeon where Jaren is fighting with you. Any emotional impact that point in the game's quest had is forever ruined for me, because I will always associate it with this. Okay, let's go. What the fuck? Why are you going back to that? Bro. Nonetheless, they get ambushed by a bunch of monsters and everything seems jolly. But then, the rest of the gang just magically spawns to help them out of nowhere. Huh? Where the hell did you bastards even come from? What? Nah, bruh, I cannot excuse that shit. This is Warriors Dawn levels of contrived. No, it's actually even worse than that. Oh, you thought that the bad writing was over? No, it's only about to get even stinkier. Because this is the time for the infamous family technique to return. Okay, let's get back to how this thing was introduced. Sid remembered about this power completely at random, and he had no idea how to control it. And now, after he's back from wherever the hell he went off to, he has now completely mastered it. How? Why? I don't fucking know, because all the character development happened off camera. And that didn't only happen with Sid, it happened with the entire cast. Well, except Benetta, I guess. He was always cool. Yuri learned to control ice, and Oki learned a new move. How did they achieve such a feat? Nobody cares apparently. They can just do that now. What possible obstacles did they have before that prevented them from having these powers before? Nobody cares. Look at the funny costumes and don't think. Power of friendship and shit. Oh, piss off. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck happened here, but the third volume suffers from a significant nosedive in writing quality, to the point where shit just happens and it doesn't even make any sense anymore. I guess everyone knew that the manga would be cancelled after this point, so they just stopped giving a shit the closer it got to the end. Huh? What's this? I guess the author could feel you would get tired of all the bullshit, so the end of the chapter hits you with this postscript.
Good morning, everyone. Or good afternoon. I wanted to end this comic with a postscript. Because this is my first serialization, I put a lot of effort into this. Even though I had troubled the NHN staff and the comic editor with a lot of things, I did everything I could do with all my might. But since I'm not perfect, there are still a lot of things I have to learn. Even so, I'm really grateful for all of you who have read my comic. I was once bullied as a child in the past, and I found that my heart belonged in manga and games. The main character in the manga I read was someone who has a strong sense of justice, and a hero who never gives up. I got my courage from that hero, and then after some years have passed, I can finally publish my own manga. I hope my manga can give someone's life courage. Just like Sid, whose fate was revealed after he got saved by a warrior. That's my wish.
You know what? I was also bullied as a child, which you could probably tell. So once again, I'm gonna have to state that this is not a bully video. This applies not only to this manga, but whenever I'm talking shit, I am never talking shit about the author. I am talking shit about the inanimate piece of fiction. All of this said, it is very, very obvious that this is bro's first work. And I know that first works are always rough and you always come back to them and die of cringe. So I'm sure the dude has improved a lot since making this manga, and I honestly wish him the best. That said, the topic of today's video is not Tatsubon himself, but the dragon nest Shingeki no Sedo. So I'll continue to talk about it and it only. With that out of the way, this is the end of the manga. Yeah, there is still also an extra chapter, but it's all just filler, so I'm not gonna cover it. As you've probably already picked up, I was not impressed with this manga at all. What, you really thought that this sad little postscript was gonna stop me from saying this manga is mid? Yeah, no sob story is gonna change my opinion, sorry. But I do have to say that it definitely wasn't all bad. So let's start with the positive. If Shingeki no Seta does have a main selling point, it would be the art. This is definitely the best part of the whole manga. There are plenty of panels that go absolutely hard and would totally sell a sick poster. But my favorite part were the various funny faces. For some reason Oki always had the best ones. I think it's safe to say that Tatsubon is definitely a much better artist than he is storyteller. Or at the very least, that was the case at the time of him making this. The other thing I have to commend is that all of the characters that weren't OCs were actually portrayed pretty accurately to the original material. Even Veilscoot, who usually suffers the most from mischaracterization, is done rather well here. This just goes to show how atrocious of a job Warriors Dawn did. Yes, I will take every opportunity I get to shit on that movie. One more thing that I liked is that there were some actually interesting ideas in the manga. But that brings me over to everything that's wrong with it. And that's because the moment you get something that could actually be cool, it doesn't actually go anywhere and just becomes lame and boring. I already went over that in the review section. But the biggest examples of that were Yuri and Benetta. There are so many fun things that could be done to their characters, but nothing just happens. And talking about nothing, I did say that the non-original characters are done rather well here. But the reason I specified that is because the complete opposite happened to everyone else. The main four is the most generic and uninspiring group of protagonists I have ever witnessed. I literally struggled to come up with more than one word to describe each one of them. Benetta, edgy. Sad, heroic. Yuri, coward. And Oki... actually, what the fuck is her character even supposed to be? She doesn't have a single trait that would differentiate her from the rest of the cast. She is like the token elf of the group. She has pointy ears and that's all you can say about her. Oh, and she makes a funny face. Haha, look at the fucking goofy face! That totally counts as a personality trait. Am I right, guys? Right? At the very least, Sed and Benetta have backstories to carry them. Yuri doesn't have anything except for being pathetic, but at least she's uniquely pathetic. Oki has absolutely nothing. No personality, no backstory. She literally has nothing to her name. No wonder I had such a hard time remembering it, because this name literally means nothing to the readers. But that's nearly not the only part where the story is lacking. There is a weird pattern I've noticed about this manga. Whenever there is a character who is introduced as cool and strong, the moment they get into their second fight, they immediately lose all their aura points and become equally as pathetic as the rest of the cast. I kid you not, this happens to literally every character who is introduced like that. Oki, Argenta, Benetta, and Gerant. This is like one of those boss after you unlock him as a playable character memes. The only character this doesn't happen to is Veilscoot. But I bet if the story went on long enough to get to Feather, the exact same thing would have happened to him too. This is yet another problem I have with the manga. The pacing is absolutely horrendous. I don't know who is to blame for this. Perhaps the volumes had to be crunched or something. But whatever it was, has significantly decreased the quality of the end product. It's like instead of developing existing characters and plot points, they tried to cram as many of them as fast as they could like a sardine factory on rush hour. And as a result, the manga became just like sardines. Stinky. If I had to summarize everything that went wrong here, this manga suffers from a terminal case of wasted potential syndrome. This is exactly why I asked Tatsubon whether he had full creative control over the content. Because it's possible that it was identity that severely handicapped the creativity here. But since I received no concrete response, I guess we'll never know what truly happened. You may have noticed that I was a bit more silly while doing my summary section. And that's because if I didn't do that, this would turn into an ASMR video. You'd fall asleep, I'd fall asleep, they'd fall asleep. Everything about this manga is painfully generic and boring. It's so boring that I was procrastinating this review so bad. I went to go exercise and tidy my closet. And you know that I don't usually do that as a disgusting gamer that I am. So the fact that I would rather do these activities than having to reread this manga for a second time is incredibly telling. This manga is so painfully average that a completely different franchise managed to rip it off without probably even knowing about its existence. I honestly can't blame anyone for thinking that this was a soulless cash grab advertisement, because it really does feel like it, unless you know that this actually wasn't commissioned by Identity. But when you find out that this is the equivalent to one of those playable OC fanfics from Wattpad in manga form, it all suddenly starts to make sense. Anyway, if you treat this manga as a legit piece of Dragon Nest media, then you'll probably be really disappointed. But if you treat this as a fanfic, then it can even be impressive at times. Mainly because of the art. If you've ever seen anything of the shonen genre before, there isn't even a point for you in reading this manga, because that means you've already seen everything it has to offer, and probably even better. If you want to experience the Dragon Nest story, you can just play the game yourself. And if you want to read it for the sake of the original characters, let's be real, literally no one cares about them. After everything I've seen, I'm totally not surprised that this manga wasn't popular, even at the height of Dragon Nest's popularity. The only reason I'd recommend you going through it is if you want some cool Dragon Nest posters to decorate your wall with. Though the character selection is gonna be a bit limited here, but still, this is the best posters you're gonna get in this fandom. With everything that I've just said, you might be surprised to hear that I'm placing this manga in the C tier of my Dragon Nest media tier list. Even with all of its problems, I still think it's nowhere near the Frost interlude fiasco. I'd say C tier is the perfect placement for it. Because it's not good, it's not horrible, it's just mid. So, since now we're done with Sad and Friends, what else? Next up, I'm planning to cover the Prophecy of the Sage manhwa, so stay tuned for that. And before you click off this video, I want you to remember that this is a story of gods, dragons, and